Uh, Alrighty, we are live for another episode of the Black Stitch Hockey Cast. More and more leagues are getting rolling in this time of year, which is pretty great. NCAA getting going, which is always great. Got our Concordia beating some random Hockey East team. Vermont had that distinction this year in the exhibition match, falling 3-1 earlier, which was it was definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing. Preseason in the NHL effectively underway, giving us eye-bleaching material like Steven Stamkos and Nashville Yellow for the first time. That's going to take probably all 4 years of his contract to adjust to. And yeah, I don't have any notable headlines to drop in on this week, so Liam, I'll toss it up to you.
Yeah. So before I dive into the standard stories for the week, so I want to start off with tribute and a condolences to the family of recently deceased mayor of the town we started up our operations in, although our official place of business is in location for our operations is Hampstead, New Hampshire, but Methuen, Massachusetts, town we grew up in, spent the bulk of our um, education in through the public school system. Neil Perry, who was thrust into a very difficult spot due to a long succession of corrupt leaders in almost a big city-esque manner, just for generations ever since they had the town manager format, never mind the council mayor format that the city uses now. A whole book could be written about that. I've explained it to some people, and they said that it almost sounds like a complete premise for a TV show. But he took that office at the beginning of 2020, so this was he was thrust into as much of a difficult position as possible with the state of affairs, both that the entire world was dealing with, as well as the internal pressure of that gig. And with the succession that he was taking on, as well as dealing with the final chapters of the controversial tenure of our now former police chief, Joseph Solomon, who is currently in court for various charges related to official misconduct. But beyond that, while Methuen youth and high school sports have been going and progressing in a very good direction for a while now, and I've often pointed to the stadium renovation project for Nicholson Stadium back in 2015, which was very successful, and that the city council was able to push forward without relying upon taxpayer money and using primarily donations from alumni from Methuen High, from what I recall. In general, like the progress has been moving in a great direction since then, and having quality government leadership is definitely like a key part of that, no matter what. And under Perry's tenure, we've seen the Methuen Tewksbury Red Rangers girls hockey program continue their perpetual competitive nature, as well as the ascension of the boys hockey team, who for the first time in quite a while won multiple Merrimack Valley Conference championships, having gone back to back in 22 and 23, and have generally reasserted themselves as a competitive program, as the culmination of Bill Blackwell's plan, who noteworthy previously for having um, been the coach of Masconomet Regional High School, which he notably included him participating in the early development of Chris Kreider before he transferred to Phillips Academy. And that just, it shows beyond just the fact that people are, the people who have been involved in a hands-on capacity via the athletics department and phys ed and other such apparatuses. It shows that the leadership at the very top of the municipal government has definitely been doing its job there. And it was great to see Perry, who is an enthusiastic supporter of those programs, get to preside over that renaissance, which really was unprecedented in some respects because, you think about the competitive nature of the boys team, it's always been something that's been happening in pockets, but it's been pretty consistent as of late, and it's been very enriching to see. So, much respect to a great leader, and by all accounts, a great man from those who knew him more intimately. It was put in such a compromising spot and handled it with grace and dignity. So much, again, condolences and rest in peace.
Nice little moment of silence there. On a less heartfelt and serious note, a moment of silence for getting Damien on this week. Whenever he has any sort of technical issues, for anybody who's ever met him in real life, Damien is the last guy who's going to figure out his own technical issue. So we'll see if he's figured it out this time or if he's just dead to the world this week. If I was a betting man, which I'm not, I have very low risk tolerance for those who know me. I'm pretty confident he's not going to figure this one out, which is a damn shame. He joined, the 2020s smartphone gang last week, and unfortunately, Damien, the user at the console, is now the one that's obsolete, not the device itself. Ka-chow.
Well, as filler, I can go into the Dev League stuff, and there's a considerable amount now that the QMJHL and WHL have started up in competitive contexts, and the OHL preseason is wrapping up. I've got the preseason game between the Saginaw Spirit and Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds going on right now. They're at an intermission currently. But on a competitive note, we'll start with the USHL because we can kind of bat through that one fairly succinctly. So the season opened on Wednesday with competition between the Youngstown Phantoms and the Tri-City Storm. The Phantoms emerged 4-3 victors in overtime, with the OT hero being Russian import Kuzma Voronin of Yaroslavl. And additionally, we had the Sioux City Musketeers taking on the Dubuque Fighting Saints, whose redemption campaign did not get off to an ideal start, as Sioux City defeated them 5-1. The standings right now, we've got the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders at the top of the Eastern Conference, as they've gone a perfect 2-0 to start their year with 7 goals for and 1 goal against. Definitely a pretty ideal spot that you can't ask for much more of. Likewise, we've had the Sioux City Musketeers and the Sioux Falls Stampede, the latter of the two having just gotten their season underway with back-to-backs in the last couple of games. Start off undefeated. The Sioux City Musketeers have the advantage in the standings by a goal differential, with them being a +5 to Sioux Falls Stampedes +4, 7-2 versus 10-6. Very narrow margins there. But the games, for the Stampede were pretty encouraging beyond just the result, with them having defeated the USNTDP 6-3 yesterday. On Sunday, we had, let's see, the Stampede up against Muskegon today. Let's see. They defeated them 4-3. Let's see. Beyond that, we also had the USNTDP go back at it today with get some redemption, beating the Waterloo Blackhawks 5-2. Let's see. Jack Murdaugh, Boston University commit, had a pretty respectable outing with him having 2 goals to his name in that matchup. Hey, there we go. And
fucking stupid.
Notably, in other matters for the USHL, the Youngstown Phantoms released an official statement noting that they had an employee recently arrested for misdemeanor prostitution, and that they are interested and fully invested in protecting the safety of their players and staff and their organization as a whole, and are taking the matter quite seriously. And I believe stated that they are cooperating fully with law enforcement at this time. So that was definitely an eyebrow raiser when I noticed it in my Instagram feed. But let's see. OHL preseason going as noted. Let's see. What were some other score lines for today? Let's see. I got the wrong tab going. That's my problem. Yeah, there we go. Let's see. Earlier today, we had the Owen Sound Attack defeat the North Bay Battalion 3-2. Let's see. Owen Sound's Matthew Kaprowski had a notable performance with him stopping 30 of 32 to get the win in the 3rd star performance in that matchup. As noted last week's episode, the season officially kicks off on Wednesday with Saginaw taking on Windsor at home in their Memorial Cup banner unveiling ceremony. I really expect that the CHL season as a whole is going to be very good, with the OHL as usual being a major contributor to that. The QMJHL is in full swing. The season started 2 days ago with the kickoff match being the Acadie Bathurst Titan, whose alumnus, by the way, Patrice Bergeron, was recently elected to the QMJHL Hall of Fame, as you might have seen on our Instagram story. They defeated the Cape Breton Eagles 4-2. Some noteworthy performances in that matchup. We had Louis-Francois Benninger tallying 2-1 and a +2 for Acadie Bathurst in the victory. Alexander Lallier had the 2nd star with 3 assists and a +2, and Jacob Newcomb had both goals for Cape Breton and a +2 to be the 3rd star in that matchup. So nice individual performance from him. So let's take a quick look at the standings just to kind of keep things a little truncated. I did just finish watching hold on. Let's see. I just had that Gatineau versus Drummondville game going on. Drummondville, the Voltigeurs defeated the Gatineau Olympics 4-1. So the campaign for the defending QMJHL champions has been off to a good start, with them also defeating the Sherbrooke Phoenix 3-2 in their opening matchup of the year. Uh, let's see. Standings. Uh, let's see. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, their setup is kind of whack. I've never really liked it. Uh, Beyond just the Voltagiers. Some other teams getting off to a solid start so far include the Shawnigan Cataracts, who will be worth keeping an eye on this year as Matvey Gradin, the recent draft selection of the Calgary Flames, as they load up their prospect pool, gets his CHL career underway with them. They are off to a 2-0 start, and they're at the top of the Western Conference. The Moncton Wildcats are also undefeated, as well as the Baie-Comeau Drakkar, the aforementioned Acadie Bathurst Titan, and the Halifax Mooseheads. So a lot of the usual suspects are off to a pretty good beginning to their seasons. The WHL's opening week was absolutely fantastic, as a lot of the new players and new faces on the scene made emphatic announcements about what they're going to be bringing to the Dub this season. Twins Liam and Marcus Ruck scored the game-winning and opening goals, respectively, against the Edmonton Oil Kings for the Medicine Hat Tigers, as Medicine Hat skated away 4-2 victors in that game, in which they just overwhelmingly dominated and outshot Edmonton 41-25. Although we did get a good look on the power play at Joe Aginla as that bloodline continues, and he tallied a goal towards the end of the game that's on the man advantage, which was quite a good look. Great play overall to complement the assist he had on the other goal scored by Edmonton, therefore meaning that he factored into both. We had Roger McQueen have a 4-goal performance against defending WHL champions, the Moose Jaw Warriors, in the league's kickoff match, as the Brandon Wheat Kings defeated Moose Jaw 5-2 to start things off for the year. In yesterday's game, McQueen made another pronouncement as he assisted a goal by Nicholas Johnson, which capped off Johnson's hat trick of his own, as the Wheat Kings defeated the Regina Pats 5-1. So quite a beginning to the season for BWK, and we might not have even seen them at full strength yet. We got Jackson Jacobson. He had a primary assist on the opening goal by Ethan Odit in that game. Still we have him for a full season. He might get this time around after he looked great in his affiliate stint in the preseason this year as well. And we expect that he'll maybe finding his footing a little bit, but he already looks very confident and skilled. So we're going to see him, grow his legs even more as the year goes on. They picked up Marcus Nguyen, who was, very talented, useful player to the forward group for the Portland Winterhawks the last couple of seasons, or even 21-22. He made some. He put in some impressive performances, but like his 40 points and his plus 23. Even though worth noting, he's a plus 59 for his career, which while providing respectable middle six scoring, just a useful player overall. That was a great addition to their roster this off season. And let's see what else is worth talking about. Oh yeah, we had Wenatchee defeat Seattle 7-1 yesterday, as Maddox McCafferty had a hat trick of his own. I agreed with the assessment I saw from Austin Kelly that he was very much a bubbling under player last year. And wouldn't be surprising if we see him have a breakout campaign. And this is definitely good footing for him to get started on. I was also pretty satisfied with the performance of Ben Davis, the third star of the game, with his 2 assists and +2. And, one of my favorite players in the dub, Kenta Isogai, had a goal and an assist. The goal closing out the matchup, and the assist being the secondary helper on McCafferty's power play goal, which ultimately stood as the GWG. So good performance by Isogai there, as the Nagano native continues to be a pretty, respectable, essential but underrated linchpin to that Wenatchee group, which has been kind of undergoing transformative processes for a while now, such as their full-blown rebuild that happened during last year, which saw them unload two very essential and respected prospects, both with NHL rights, in the form of Matthew Savoy and Connor Geeky. But beyond that, let's see. There's one more I want to talk about, or rather, a team and their tale of two games that went to overtime and unfolded in similar manners. Of course, with the that being the Victoria Royals. They split 2 5-4 OT results, winning the first and falling in the second with the Tri-City Americans. As you'd expect, Cole Resney had his contributions, such as assisting getting the primary assist, to be specific, on the OTGWG, as he began his DY in pretty good fashion. And then, of course, having 2 assists in the following game. So performing above a PPG and, aggressively attacking the net, getting some good shots on goal, just not having finished quite yet, but still making impacts on the game. But the real story, of course, as I've talked about at fair length, has been Keaton Verhoff. We just published an article on him today. Of course, if you have not seen that yet, although it is doing numbers, and I, of course, appreciate the support as my continued investment in some of the talent that they have on board is something that readers are pretty interested in, which I appreciate, especially with these guys. It's worth noting that Resney was a third overall pick in 2022, and Verhoff is fourth overall in their respective WHL drafts, and Verhoff being in 2023, accounting for them being the top two highest ever selected picks by Victoria. But they are kind of bubbling under due to them playing for a team that has been, kind of overlooked due to their tendency to be kind of fledgling, we'll say. But that seems to be doing quite well. So that's in the comment section of this stream if you have not checked it out yet. But Verhoff, of course, had the game-tying goal that knotted it up at 4-4 in the third period in the first game, and then, of course, was the overtime hero in that matchup as well, scoring in successive clutch fashions. Then in the second game had an assist as well as the GTG that sent it to overtime, tying it up at 4-4 yet again. So 3 goals, an assist, and a +6 in the first 2 games by the 2026 draft-eligible right-handed defenseman, who I think the scouts are going to really take notice of this coming year, as he's already looked pretty confident, did so in his cup of coffee last year. 12-game look that showcased a lot of poise and compete, which he's gotten praise from by those whose heads have been turned. But also, much respect to Gavin Garland of Tri-City, as he scored the game-winning goal, accounting for his first ever tally in the WHL. Not a bad way to announce yourself in that league. There were just so many great stories in the dub of these up-and-comers, and that has to be included as one of the contributing factors to that. It was also interesting seeing sort of the reversal of fortune in which the shots on goal and possession numbers sort of flipped between these two. It was almost like they kind of just the Verhoff dominance and clutchness was the common thread, but it almost like it was like the team sort of reversed roles. It was. I definitely felt a little bit bummed out for goaltender Jaden Krause of Victoria facing 50 shots on goal in that matchup. But the compete and like the overall just tenacity of the group over these two games was something they had to be pretty satisfied with. So yeah, really, like this was just like an absolute joy for me to watch as a prospects watcher, seeing all these youngsters like start off in such emphatic fashion and having all these great things play out. Guys in their DY, guys who are just starting out in junior, like just making these emphatic statements. And I expect we're going to see a lot more from, a lot more talents. Victoria should be interesting to watch, especially with that injection of Marcus Lopen into the roster. Once he comes over from Winnipeg's training camp, I can imagine that he's going to be quite an asset to that forward group, which, is doing pretty well, being facilitated by Rezhny, who's now the 1C, but can always do with some more reinforcement. I'm looking forward to this year as a whole, with that being a big part of it. And that wraps it up for developmental hockey this week.
Yeah. A lot of development going on in the developmental hockey.
Second, I was up 5-1 on Sioux about halfway through the third for an update on that preseason action. Shots are even at 21 apiece.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy watching preseason getting rolling again. Seeing guys getting chances, guys getting looks. Real interesting to see, excuse me. Cole Kopke getting some reps in for the Bruins, getting a goal in there for the Bruins after a long stint in the Tampa Bay Lightning dev system. Maybe he's the next Carter Verhaeghe who just randomly gets ejected out of the Tampa Bay dev system and just kind of figures it out somewhere else. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, the Buffalo-Pittsburgh, obviously Pittsburgh kind of got washed, but it was nice to see Puljujarvi get a hattie versus J.J. Peterka, who also put up a hattie. But I think, it's preseason's first game. He didn't play a ton of starters. I mean, the one line that I would like to see if going forward is the Sam Lafferty line last night for Buffalo was phenomenal. When you look at, like, the impact that that Lafferty, Kubel and Melenstein had together, like, they were really good. I mean, Lafferty stood up for Zach Benson, who took a hit late in the third. So, like, when you see the impact of penalties they drew last night, it's preseason, but I think there's definitely something to it as far as a bottom six line that could definitely do a lot for Buffalo this season. So, it's just, I don't know. To me, it's something interesting as far as chemistry. It's early, but
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
Kubel.
Yeah, I knew who you meant. Yeah, I think really the key takeaway from that, or I like the fact that Paterka's already rolling. He's already comfortable. I mean, JJ Paterka might be the most underrated young forward in the National Hockey League. He's a guy not a lot of people talk about, not a lot of people know about. Mainly because he plays in Buffalo, and much like Shohei Ohtani up until this season, no matter how good you are, if you're not playing in the postseason, Nobody's really going to pay you any mind. Paterka's been pretty quietly, was a 30-point guy his first year, was a 50-point guy his second year, has been really effective in the offensive zone, and really sharpening his defensive game the last couple of years. Like, not only do I see, Paterka as one of the better young forwards in the game under the radar, but with the Olympics coming in a couple of years, Paterka's probably going to be playing on Draisaitl's wing come the Olympics, as one of the premier German forwards of this era. So yeah, really good to see him already kind of feeling confident and building his confidence against Pittsburgh to maybe, get the Sabres off to a good start for once so that they can actually, put all the fucking pieces together and do something with their roster. I've seen a lot of people pretty critical of their blue line group this year, and I'm not entirely sure I agree with the mindset I've seen. Like, I don't know. I'm not the biggest Owen Power fan in the universe, but a top six of Power, Dahlin, Byram, Jokiharju, Samuelson, and Clifton is definitely not as bad as some of our cohorts on hockey Twitter have been peddling. Like, there are certainly worse defensive cores throughout the league. So I mean, it's definitely, you they're definitely better than Detroit.
Yeah.
Man, I wonder if at any point in the next 8 years of Seider's contract, anybody's going to realize how overrated he is.
Yeah.
Like, man, I see people like with you signed the franchise elite number 1D, and I kind of sit here and I'm like, do you people actually watch Red Wings games? Like, have you actually, speaking of German players, with the Olympics coming up in a couple of years, like, do these people actually, like, watch Red Wings games? Like, this dude has progressively gotten worse every year. His play in his own zone has regressed every year. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
like,
I feel like it's a lot of it too, though, is when you watch it. I mean, like we kind of talked about a little bit yesterday. Like, his whole highlight reel is just, okay, some of his passes and stuff in the offensive zone and his reverse hitting. And that's pretty much his entire highlight reel right now at this point, where it's like, he's really not, like, I look at like a guy like Rasmus Dahlin, who, again, I think expectations were super high, but I feel like a lot of people were extremely critical of him in his first few seasons in Buffalo. I mean, again, I thought he looked good. I mean, since he came to the league, his numbers weren't great. It's just, I just think people are so high on Seider, where it's a lot of the same people that were like, oh, Rasmus Dahlin isn't producing like he should be. And it's one of those things where it's just, to me, it's kind of weird, where Dahlin's had the numbers. He's been great. So it's just, I don't know. It's kind of odd.
like, hot take, and what I don't like about the Seider contract is how it scales other players' contract values, and this is not an apples to apples comparison of two defensemen that are the same age, but let's call this an apples to Kiwis comparison of, like, if Mo Seider's worth $8 million, what the fuck is Thomas Harley worth? Like, Thomas Harley was frankly phenomenal last season for the Dallas Stars. Like, they've managed his deployment properly. I mean, his goals against replacement was fucking plus 19.4 last year. He was probably the most, like, one of the top second pairing, play creating defenders in the game last season, despite it basically being his rookie year. And subsequently, in that second pairing role, playing, some minutes with Ryan Suter, who, is about as fast as molasses at this point, was still a positive defensive impact player and, like, his own independent regard with his, like, skating trajectory, his, his having to be the guy along the wall, the guy making the mobility plays. Not a dig against Suter in any capacity either on that one. But like you look at a guy like Thomas Harley, who in last season was better than most Sider's been at any point in his career. And I don't see people talking about how, Thomas Harley, who's the same age as Sider, is, in the top defenseman conversation in the league. And like to look to another guy from that draft class that is talked about pretty frequently on this podcast, like I'm hard pressed, and I just want to get the analytics in front of me on this. Like I'm hard pressed to even say that, Mo Sider is significantly better than Cam York at this point. Like, sure, Sider's had more consistency on offense, but like Cam York is not the reason his team is getting blown apart in their own zone on a consistent
No,
basis.
here's the thing about that is like York's downward swing in contrast with previous seasons this last year in offensive productivity was owed entirely to the point that to the fact that his head coach openly declared that he did not view him as an NHL player at the beginning of the year. So at that point, York's emphasis was to prove himself in the fundamentals respect. To which he did with great success. Like, you look at his expected goals, particularly when he didn't have to play with Atkinson, Delorier, or Lawton, who were the biggest anchors on the team and had the biggest negative impact on overall raw data for everyone that they played with. There was not a single player on the team who I think saw their numbers improve by playing with any of those three players. Like, like in the RAPM models, as I noted before, York didn't look great, but like all his raw data looked absolutely phenomenal because of the emphasis he put on his defensive responsibility. So now we have a full idea of what his player profile is, and we think we're going to see a breakout season coming from him because with him having proven himself in that respect, he's most likely going to be allowed to play like a monkey on cocaine in the offensive zone again this coming year. So we're going to see like full dimensional like play from him, and that's and seeing him like really take that forward step, and that's saying a lot because you look at that Bruins game last year where they nearly came back. Like everything that went right, he was on the ice and was responsible for in some capacity. Like even that Frost goal that Frost got jerked off for by everybody was the ode to a York primary assist. So it's like he can take over games and like be a 1D even when he's not playing with every dimension of his game. So like we can see him and like be that good and take that step forward. And like we haven't seen Sider progressing in that direction. Certainly not this past season. And I can't imagine he's going to be taking a step up like that this coming year either.
The more I look at the class, that 2019 draft class, that is definitely going to be remembered as one of the stranger, 5 years later, this is definitely one of the strangest draft classes in recent league history where, like, one of the objectively weakest top fives of all time with Capo Caco, Kirby Doc, Bo Byram, and Alex Turcotte currently failing to live up to any level of their hype. But also, like, Mo Sider, Dylan Cousins, Philly Broberg, Trev Zegras, and Vasily Podkolzin, like, just a bizarre group of 10 players there in terms of like what the expectations were.
Yeah.
And really, as you go through that entire first round, just like so much high up and down really in that group.
Yeah. You look at the depth aspect, like I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think just in terms of irrespective of ceiling, just in terms of like floor and honestly like results and overall impact, we were justified and vindicated in taking Cam York over Cole Caulfield because like aside from Caulfield's health woes, like the thing is with him is that I think size does matter for goal scorers in the NHL, and it's not in terms of
height. It's in terms of like weight, stockiness, and ability to play through contact when you consider how many goals are scored in close. He's not built like the sort of guy who can do that, and his shot mechanics are not good enough for him to be scoring like absurd amount of goals from the perimeter. So like all these talk of like Caulfield being like a 40 to 50 goal scorer are like probably never going to come to fruition, even if things go ideally for him. Like almost every single one of those top prospects from that class was significantly overrated.
And who would have thought probably one of the best who would have thought that one of the most productive and proficient players in that draft class was going to be Matthias Michelli? Like, Matthias Michelli, like, not really seen as a high-end guy playing in the U show, like, goes back to Liga after the draft pick. By all intents and purposes is considered undersized. Goes to the team with objectively one of the worst dev systems in NHL history, and just fucking goes out and just becomes that guy. Like, goes to Ilves, out in Tampere, has a great run in Tucson, and then has just been an absolute fucking playmaking phenom out in the desert. Like, how the fuck did Matthias Michelli end up being better than a vast amount of the guys? Like, how did the Coyotes somehow get this wrong on Victor Soderstrom at 11, but somehow subsequently get it right on Michelli in the fourth? Like, baffling to me how the Coyotes managed to, like, somehow shoot blind into the forest, and it's literally like the pearl from Steinbeck of like, we've just wildly shot into a forest and hit the crying baby here on this one.
Great.
Yeah, you weren't expecting that reference tonight, Damien.
No, that's top tier right there. Good old Stein. The Stein.
I don't know if I've ever met a single person who referred to John Steinbeck as the Stein before you just did that right there.
I'm telling you, bro. I mean, talking about pearls, though, how about that quote from Ryan Reeves on practice, his first one with Berube, where they're asking about how hard of a practice it was out of all of his practices. He's like, yeah, today was in my top two, and it probably wasn't two. And it's such a great quote from Ryan Reeves. And it's been pretty interesting because when you look at Woll and a lot of the other guys on Toronto, like which kind of makes me wonder what Keefe was doing in training camp and practice, because all these dudes like, yo, dude, Berube is all about every rep matters. Everything's about being intense, getting through the pain. And I'm like, man, Toronto, they might be a unit this year just on conditioning, but hey, Craig Berube.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm still not I'm not a believer when it comes to Craig Berube. Like, I don't know. I'm not sold.
For me, it's very interesting to have both a veteran and some younger players who are already like, oh yeah, these practices are night and day from what we were doing last year. So for me, on a fundamental level, it is kind
See,
of
that scares me though, because it's not like the Leafs were a bad team last year. It's
no, they
like
weren't.
they were a team that
Like the biggest like change is that Berube believes in accountability to like a degree that team never really did, and the team suffered for it. And like I think that was like part of why like they never reached their ceiling as a group through those years. It's not the sole reason, but like I think these like small changes might see like despite all the alterations that still need to be made in roster construction, particularly on the back end, we're going to at least see probably improved results. Just so like these fundamental changes And particularly, like, I do think we're going to see, like, you know what I am actually interested in? I think the Savard hire will, like, I think the biggest change there is you look at Austin Matthews' passing metrics, like, they're fucking phenomenal, and the assist totals are going to catch up because you're going to have him setting up the sort of chances that are finished by his teammates more often. And, like, people will see it as, like, a play breakout year. And it's like, no, like, he's always been like this. It's just that things have changed enough for to where you actually see it in the productivity results as well. So I think there are things to be sort of optimistic about, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for Max Avad's work that he's gonna do up there. I just, whenever I see a coach that I'll always like, anytime this is like a hockey coach is through the lens of economics. Whenever you see a coach perennially seeing diminishing returns, seemingly year over year everywhere they go, it's pretty much the Leafs have to win the cup here in year one, or the Leafs have to win the cup this year with Berube, or it's never going to happen based off of his historic career trajectories behind the bench of, like, he holds his guys accountable, but it's very clear based off of his trajectories in both Philadelphia and St. Louis that his voice gets stale very quickly.
Well, let's be honest with ourselves. If you're, like, fully entrenched in what happened in Philly, it's that you realize that it was Hextall in what was, like, kind of his early tenure was very well received, and I'm not sure why. Because, like, I mean, I get that we had high aspirations for, like, the draft selections and, like, why we had how we were seen as having the number one prospect pool, but, like, his, like, executive style was very dictatorial, and, like, we paid the price for it, and he gave up on Berube way too early. And then, like, with the Hacksaw hiring and how that he just had absolutely no galvanizing abilities, whatsoever. Like, I, it's just like that trajectory almost can't be included in the data because it was fucked up so badly. Like I can see, we definitely saw things like increasingly decline in St. Louis, but like we can't make that assertion about his head coaching career as a whole because we don't have a full picture of what it was actually supposed to be like because of Ron Hextall.
Yeah,
That's
Ron
fair.
Hextall has a way.
This guy knows too because he fell victim to his tourism as well.
You know, I'm so impressed by Ron Hextall in general because he has to be the most iconic disappointment in NHL history. Like, both his goaltending and, like, executive hockey careers are, like, so frequently spoken to and spoken about. And, like, Ron Hextall is like the Sonic 06 of the NHL, where everybody's aware of everything he has done, and everybody looks at it and is like, wow, this looks great! And then you realize there's virtually zero substance behind all of the, like, spectacle that was his career.
Yeah, I like when you look at his early/peak years in between the pipes, like his aggressive and competitive nature was like part of an essential part of the runs, but it was also part of their undoing. Like when you look at his tendency to just take these like slashing penalties at the worst time, which like definitely a big part of why Philadelphia lost that final in 7 games, and which like with that being the year where like most likely that dynasty could have been dethroned. And like he was kind of like a flash in the pan, just for that having that level of relevance to begin with, and then like that almost can be said for his executive career. Like everything good, but mostly fell short of expectations. There are a couple of guys from that regime who hung around and stayed relevant on that roster. Saginaw just won 6-3, so was making a game of it a little bit there, but they eventually were not able to crawl back.
which serves them right for having their aesthetics so closely mirror that of the Detroit Red Wings. But anyway, it's just like, you know, the guy was good when it came to ripping things down almost to the studs, just about, and then piling up a prospect pool and then having so much of that aggression and insistence upon himself just completely, be his and the team's undoing in like an almost exact replica of his goaltending career.
Sorry, I couldn't resist the urge to make a meme for later. I needed to get that done before I forgot. I needed to have this. The only time I've ever been inspired by Ron Hextall, I had to use the Ron Hextall inspiration. I'm just really glad that my team decided to pick Pat Verbeek to ruin their organization instead of Ron Hextall. You can only pick one overrated player from the 90s. And, the Bruins picked Don Sweeney. We picked Pat Verbeek. The Red Wings have made their bed with Steve Yzerman. Everybody gets one, Peter. Everybody gets one. Fucking Pat Verbeek. I can't even really be mad at Verbeek yet. The Ducks haven't had an awful... we haven't fucked up the rebuild yet. It's really if the next 2 years we don't even start contending is when things are where we just have to accept we are the Buffalo Sabres now. One fear.
The Buffalo Sabres, that they were a hospital ward.
I think we've been spending too much time in proximity of the Anaheim Angels. I think the Angels' inability to turn things around despite having overwhelming promise and roster talent is starting to, their overwhelming mediocrity is starting to permeate the Ducks organization.
I mean, they basically, their issue was their roster construction, just, to complement Trout and Ohtani was just completely overwhelming. I mean, underwhelming. Those, that, near decade that was their core, and just completely failing to... Because they had a trajectory they could have built upon. Because, when there was Mike Trout and post-prime Albert Pujols as their core, they had, their best season since then. And then they add... the most unique two-way player specimen to ever exist, possibly, and they completely fucked that up. Whereas, Anaheim has this young core, and is just completely with a lot of talent. And now you're seeing Mintyukov, especially getting injured and adding to that canon, just being woefully unprepared, as a lot of teams are, to adequately train and condition that group.
Yeah. Yeah.
What part of the chain though, do you think, in 2 years, if it doesn't work out, where would you go first?
Well, it really comes down to whether or not we have effectively developed the people and the players that we need to develop specifically. If things have failed 2 years out, that is mainly indicative that we somehow fucked up Mintyukov's dev. That means we fucked up Zellweger's dev. And that means that between McTavish, Carlson, and Zegras, specifically those three, assuming we're going to keep Zegras, I don't foresee him actually getting traded at this point. If the Ducks fuck up that, developing that core to be impactful, that's where you're really looking 2 years from now. And the problem with the Ducks, with their prospect pool, and why I'm also very tempered in my expectations, is I don't see a single forward on their roster being an MVP caliber guy at this point. You look at all of the successful retools and rebuilds of guys, being a top 5 player in the league at any point. John Tavares' run with the Islanders when he was a Hart finalist, Getzlaf, when he was a Hart finalist in the same season. Like, none of the guys in Anaheim's forward group have that kind of ceiling, which is why I still don't comprehend why they took fucking Seneca when, like, not for nothing, Demidov could have been one of those, high-end guys in that conversation. I'm not saying he's going to, but, I don't think Seneca even has a ceiling in that fucking universe where, like, Demidov does. So it really sucks that we don't really have that guy who's going to be a top 10 Hart-type player in our forward group. So,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I think I definitely think Ivan, despite his bust potential, like has at least a really respectable ceiling, whereas like Seneca has a high bust potential and a ceiling that's not even close to that. So like you could at least justify like the big swing considering like there would have been a huge potential payout from it, whereas like Seneca had a lower ceiling that was reliant upon development that he probably is not going to get with that most recent injury, delaying a part of a very essential season for him. So there just isn't any way you can justify it.
And on that note, I think we should start wheeling towards the big finish for the week.
Hmm. Yeah, so I'm gonna hone in on our home end. I always get a bit pet peevy about that distinction because hone means to strengthen your skill in something, whereas to home in on something is to focus on it. Quick little vocabulary lesson for people here. I'm gonna home in on our defensive prospects. Well, Spencer Gill is very raw and mistake prone at this point in his dev. And we definitely saw it today in that preseason game against the Caps, where he just doesn't seem prepared for the pace of play quite yet, which is fine for an 18-year-old defenseman. Uh, there's a long pathway there. But we've seen flashes of skill with him, and like especially at the preseason or at the rookie camp games as well. Like on both sides of the ice, like having like this ability with the puck, which I hope is like the tendency for the Org if they're going to draft these big men, is to add more of that to the pool. Um, I think, and even like in his defensive zone, like stopping that 2-on-1 single-handedly by taking guys out, and then get, driving the puck up the ice and having the goal, game-tying goal be scored out of it with just under 14 seconds left. Like that sequence against the Rangers in that first rookie game was just fucking ridiculous. Like, I would honestly go in on Spencer Gill at this point as the defensive prospect of the future and focus on his dev and cultivating the ceiling that I think is pretty already evident based off of these looks. Never mind how good he was in the QMJHL last year. Probably the league's best defenseman overall, and a pick that was like the one that I was most satisfied with on day 2. Like one that I was enthusiastic about from the jump. It didn't have to gaslight myself into, even though I was like, I was okay at first, but I was like more like enthusiastic about it and had quite a bit of zest pretty early on. Um, and I was like, and I just think, I think that in tandem with that, the best thing you can do at this point is trade Oliver Blanc to a team with a dearth of defensive prospect options because he's going to be really, really overvalued based off of his points at face value, which are inflated by him being a bumper or power play option for the Avengers squad that is effectively the London Knights or the Justice League with him basically being the Aquaman. And just because like his overall skill set is not at that level. He has all of the mistakes and the inability to make the adequate reads as a player who's entering his D+2, in contrast with a player who's entering his D+1 while expected to fill a similar role. So with Spencer Gill's ascension and his clearly visibly better, just outright superior toolkit and just like overall capacity to be like a similar player with even more capabilities at his disposal. Bonk just becomes expendable at that point, and the return on him would be quite good, just based off of the reputation that he has. So honestly, like I think that this is something that the Briere regime and the developmental staff would be completely justified in doing in a path that they would be right to go down.
Makes sense. Yeah, so I don't know. So far there's so many players on IR and like long-term injury where like I'm not gonna be like guys, it feels like the NFL now, but like I mean honestly again there are certain conditions which with a lot. Like you look at Logan Couture who only played 6 games last year. He's got, that deep groin issue. He's on LTIR. I don't know if he's gonna play any games this season, but like you look at TJ Oshie who I don't think he's gonna be playing again with that back injury. You look at what just happened with Robin Lehner, where he's coming off a season where he had hip surgery. We're looking at Vladar, who's obviously again he's younger than Lehner, but Vladar had hip surgery last season. And you look at like Jesper Fast, who has that neck surgery. He's out for the season already. You have Krug with the ankles already out for season. So it's like I don't know. Like for me, it's just I feel like there's like a season where there's more players on, LTIR already like guaranteed not playing the season. So it's disappointing.
Yeah. Really wanted to double click, mainly because we got an article out that's still doing pretty well in the Midwest. Uh, University of Minnesota Duluth pulled off one of the craziest upsets I've seen in really the college hockey sphere in a while. Yeah, they were the eighth ranked team in the nation coming into the season. Ohio State, obviously number one. No, I don't think anybody expected Ohio State to not only lose yesterday, but then to come out and lose again today. Absolutely fucking absurd. The last time that the Buckeyes have lost back-to-back games in Columbus was in January of 2019 to the Golden Gophers. So really, their dominance, 3 straight runs to the national championship. Um, the unprecedented run in the incredible roster talent that they still possess, really spoke to. I don't know if there was a lot of surprise because there's still not a lot of coverage of women's sports, especially with hockey commitments. And Caitlin Kramer, who's definitely one of the best 2006s available, for her to commit to Minnesota Duluth, which is realistically a program that hasn't. They won 5 between 2001 and 2010. They won 5 national championships, but haven't been able to win one since. Her decision to go to the U of Minnesota Duluth really feels like the Walkie equivalent of Arch Manning going to the Longhorns. Really just a tremendous player going to a university that has not been anything but riding their reputation while producing exceptional players. Emma Soderberg immediately comes to mind. Producing good players, but not really necessarily getting, the results. And to see her as a freshman in her second fucking game scoring 2 unassisted goals to not only tie, but then win the game in Ohio is just, it's great for the game. It's great for the league. It's great for the Viz. I wish more people were covering it than, a couple places in Minnesota and us.
Facts. The moment you went down the Texas route, I just immediately went rip Colt McCoy in my head. Not that injury would have made not happening would have made like a big difference in that game when you consider just how much that Alabama's ground game just absolutely eviscerated them. But I still just if I were going to be bitter and resentful for a sporting event for decades after the fact, it would be that, considering the totality of things. But yeah, you know, solid developmental trajectories going on. It's good to also have like a fantastic women's hockey headline at this point in the year. To that point, you can expect Christian to continue to keep the PWHL content coming. If you're looking forward to that Boston Fleet article, oh, your hopes will be fulfilled in the very immediate future. It should be enjoyable. Let's continue that hype train after that pretty awesome rebrand that was league wide, but I think this market was especially pretty satisfied by. Um, KHL, CHL, that sort of stuff, you can expect that in written format, and for those sort of talking points to continue to come up in pod format as well in the coming times. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to everyone listening to Spotify in the future or checking us out on YouTube. I believe last week's episode will be going up on that platform pretty soon, as well as this one. And we really appreciate the ongoing support. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.